Hello, everyone. My name is Saurabh, and welcome to another episode of Freshly Pressed. Today, we have with us Tony Foster from Comix. Good day, Tony.
Hi, hello. How you doing?
Good, we're doing good. Before we kick in, I would like to do acknowledgement of the country. Um, I would like to acknowledge uh, the original custodians of the land, um, the Gadigal people of Eora Nation, where I come from in Australia.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, and like to acknowledge all the elders, past, present, and future. Um, cool. Let's get into it. So, Tony, how's how's the today been for you?
Oh, it's been busy, I've got work and we just we we let people know today about a character that's going to come out in comic scene. So we did a bit of that, and yeah, I've been just doing some additional shopping. So my wallet is a little bit lighter this evening. So
Yeah, that's. So, what's the new character coming up in comic scene?
So with this version of the Kickstarter, we said that we wanted to commit to doing some picture strips in the magazine, and we wanted to commit to paying a decent page rate for the artists. And so the people who are supporting the Kickstarter until Thursday are contributing to that. And the character that's going to come out is a character called Tara Togs,
Yep.
which you have there, and it's drawn by a guy called Stephen White, who is known for. Well, I think he's drawn for Viz Comic in the UK. It's quite a
Right.
well-known comic. He's done artwork for Irwilly, the Bruins, which are kind of Scottish characters. Here for DC Thompson, I think he's done work for the Dandy and the Beano and things like that. And I was just in his flat collecting a piece of artwork for an exhibition I was doing over here, and he showed me some work they had been doing on Tara Togs, which just looked
It
absolutely
looks
amazing.
incredible.
It's
Yeah.
it I've been around reading comics for many years, and sometimes you just see a strip that just blows you away, and 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 what I was trying to get for a comic scene was a picture strip that kind of emulated what we were trying to do in this version of the magazine. So
Mm.
this particular strip, it's got a bit of it looks a bit like Tintin, which a lot of people in the UK, if you read comics, your first experience of comics was Tintin in the local library, because when I was a kid, I think comics were looked down on a little bit, but Tintin
Yeah.
was slightly accepted along with Asterix, and if you were really lucky, Isna Good in some
Yeah.
libraries. And he's got that kind of European style, but with a very sort of British tradition of comics. A bit of a modern edge to it. It's adventure. It's a female character. I think it would appeal to people who are young or old. The draftsmanship in the whole strip was absolutely fantastic, and I just we were starting to do this, paying a decent page rate for doing something in comic
Mm.
scene, and I just thought, well, I'm just going to ask Stephen what's he doing with Tara Talks,
Yeah.
and he's got plans for Tara, but we've agreed to do some shorter strips, and we might do something together later on, but
Mm.
um, it, all I can say is that this character, when I saw it, I mean, I think this character. I mean, you can't say it lightly when you think I've seen this character and I've seen this picture strip, and I think it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
And if people see it, if people pick up comic scene and this Kickstarter, I think they're picking up a collector's item, because I think in the future this character could go all the way when it comes to it could be there's a number of characters that have started to be known to people out with the comic books that they're in, whether that's a Dev Pikey book, or whether it's Hilda, or whether it's all this kind of stuff. And I
Yeah.
think Tara Talks has the potential to be that character. And
Wow.
yeah, so I'm including it within. We're doing extra pages in Comic Scene because Comic Scene is more about comic books, etc. There is some
Yeah.
strips. We're doing some extra pages, and Tara Talks is the character. And so we is the character we've chosen, and today we announced it today. So we'll see what
That's
comes.
amazing. Yeah, that's really, really good. And funny you say that because Tintin was actually the first thing that came to my mind when I saw Tara
Yeah,
Talks.
I mean, there's no doubt there's an influence there, but the draftsmanship on this
Yeah.
strip that I saw. I mean, I saw the black and white. It's all been coloured now. It's 66 pages long. The story that he's done, and it there is that influence there, but it's set in Edinburgh, just outside Edinburgh. It's a a British Scottish character, and
Mm.
it's just she is just an absolutely perfect character for Comic Scene, and this version of the magazine, and I'm really pleased that we're gonna feature her in the magazine.
That is amazing. And I'm looking forward to it. So I've backed the campaign digital this time.
Yeah.
I have all the previous ones. I did the history of comics last
All
time
right,
around.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed them. I hope you enjoyed
Oh, I
them.
love them. I love them. They are a big part of my bookshelf. I love them.
Yeah, yeah. You. It's interesting with the history of comics because, I mean, obviously we've had Brexit over here in the UK, and I'm sure it doesn't really affect you over in Australia, but a lot of our readers are from Europe, and it's been a bit of a nightmare since Brexit because of posting out overseas has been really, really difficult,
Yeah,
surprisingly
yeah.
difficult, more difficult than I anticipated. So it's made the actual model of the history of comics quite difficult to do because the postage is just phenomenally expensive.
Yeah,
And you
I
must know this
agree.
more because I mean, the postage to Australia is horrendously expensive anyway. So I got a lot of respect for somebody who but digital is the answer.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but
exactly.
yeah, so I'm glad you're gonna get, but it'll be a collector's item, so you maybe want the print version as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, like you said, I think combined with COVID and then
Mm,
supply chain pressures, it's
mm,
been so expensive. Like, especially even from US,
yeah,
we get a lot of postage from the US, and still
yeah.
it's $23 for a
Oh.
comic book to be shipped. And it's like I can't possibly justify like a $16 book and then a $23 shipping
Yeah,
for it. Yeah,
yeah,
it's yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You think
it's
it'd be, and you think it'd be really simple for somebody to just go right. Where are the places that people buy these books? Well, Australia is one, America is another. Uh, some European countries like Germany and France, the UK, and because the printing can be so cheap, particularly for small digital runs, you
yeah.
think that somebody would go, well, we can print here and post from here and do it that way. But yeah, it would be good if someone could actually come up with that. That would be really good. It seems a bit too complicated for me to do, but certainly if someone did it, so you're only paying like £3 or $3 or whatever it is for your postage, that would be great. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's very, very true. And I think the only thing that gets in the way of that is probably a lot of times you need to see how the proofs come out.
yeah,
Uh, but before sending people out, like the quality of the print and everything. But
yeah.
like apart from that,
If quality is important to you, then yes, there's that element of it. Yeah, I'm not sure if big publishers think that way. Smaller ones do, but big publishers
yeah,
just
No.
I've often read my 2000 AD in the UK, and one page has been a little bit, the print quality hasn't particularly great. So
Gotta love those 2080 books. Yeah, good segue actually, because
Mhm.
you talked about a bit about reading Tintin and Asterix growing up, which I also loved.
Yeah,
And
Mhm.
I think they were a large part of my childhood as well.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, how did you get into comics in the first place? And what? Yeah, bit of a
Yeah, so
history around that.
I'm one of these really annoying kids who was brought up on the classic books like Robinson Crusoe and um, uh, Dickens, and from a very very early age, and that was my first experience with reading, probably more than comics. And then I started to get into comics, and we used to in the UK we could take the bottles back to the pub, and you used to get 10 pence a bottle. So I used to end up taking like 10 bottles back, and I used to get a pound for that. And I
Nice.
and then I got and then I go to my grandparents at the weekend, and I get a pound from my gran as well. So I had £2 to then go and buy um, things from the shop, and it was through that I discovered comics. All the kind of I was a sort of Fleetway IPC person. I wasn't really a Beano or a Dandy person.
Mm,
The humor comics of IPC seemed a little bit more not as straight laced as DC Thompson did. I'm not sure if I was in the majority of people, because obviously those particular comics sold bucket loads, but I was
yeah,
always
yeah,
I was really into those kind of comics, and I would buy things like um, Cheeky Weekly and which I loved, and Whizzer and Chips and Core and Buster and all these kind of, you name it, I bought it. I was the
yeah,
typical comic fan. If it was a first issue, I'd be there with all the free gifts, doing it, giving it
yeah,
loudly. But then what happened is it was probably about 1978, and I was lucky because I was brought up in the north of England. So what used to happen then is some entrepreneur used to sort of get the US comics that used to come on, that used to protect cargo on boats, and then they would take those comics and they feed them into newsagents in and
mm,
around the UK, and obviously the north of England was, because they were coming into Liverpool. The north of England was one of the areas that they would deliver to. So I started to pick up stuff like Superman and Batman very very early on, and of course, you see a lot of people who've gone, oh, I used to read Battle and Action, and 2000 AD. I didn't read those. I didn't graduate from the funnies to 2000 AD. I graduated from that to these American comics, and I would go for DC comics.
mm,
Funnily enough, because I wouldn't read DC Thompson in the UK, but I would read DC comics from America, and I just started to, and I'd start in this newsagents, and then I'd start looking for other ones in bus stations, and all. A number of people used to do this as young kids,
mm,
and yeah, and it was always a bit of give and take, because I think comics at that time were about 7 or 8p in the UK, and an American comic was 15 pence, and it was
yeah,
that,
yeah,
you were then going, oh, but I could get two comics for 14 pence, or I have to buy this 22-page comic from
yeah,
America. And then
yeah,
when 2008 came out, it was this like they had this thing where it was like a big splash page to start with,
mm,
and I would go in my head, but that's just one page. And whereas in
yeah,
this American comic, I have like 9 panels on a page. So I'm getting a bargain here. I'm getting more books money for my. So I started to read that, and it was only I moved up to Scotland I left England and moved up to Scotland, and I had a friend who read 2000 AD, and well, he also had the original Dan Dur's stuff as well, and I started to read those, and then I graduated to 2000 AD, probably in its golden age, or what's known as the golden age. Although I'm
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
enjoying it at the moment, and yeah, so that's how I got into that. That's how, and of course that was exciting. And then you moving into 1986 and 82 and 82 to 86, which was a time when all these great comics were coming out from the States,
Mm,
and all
mm,
the people from the UK were being named in 2000 AD and going to the
yeah,
States as well. And some did it better than others, but they were just getting everybody from the
yeah,
UK at
yeah,
that point, whether they were seasoned writers or whether they were just writers who were still learning their craft.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so but yeah, that's kind of how I got into comics. And at the same time, I was really interested in European comics, and I was really interested in comic fanzines about comics. So I would
That's
be
amazing.
buying them as well, and and I did a bit of self publishing after that. So
That's amazing. That's really good. Yeah, and you started a magazine that's a meta magazine about comics.
yeah, yeah. So what happened? Is that? Do you want to know about that? Do you know how did I
I've,
how did I get
why
how did that
why
happen?
not?
Yeah.
Why not?
So I think when I was a kid, I must have been, I don't know, 17 or 18, and I just knew people who were into comics, and we just did a strip zine called Atomic at the time. And we thought it was a bit like it's a bit like when you hear Grant Morrison and Mark Miller talking about how they took over 2000 AD, and I think
Yeah.
maybe it's David Bishop's time, and these are kind of like these guys go, oh, we were just bucking the trend and creating something that was fantastic, and you kind of look back at it and you go, it was just a bunch of guys just kicking off against
Yeah.
the establishment of really talented writers and artists,
Mm.
and and thinking they could do better. So essentially, I was exactly the same, but we were doing it in a strip design called Atomic, where we thought that we just thought we were the bee's knees, and at
Mm.
some
Mm.
point, some great publisher was going to come and pick us up, and we were all going to be really famous and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so we did about 12 or 13 issues of Atomic, and then you start to realize actually that it's not about putting in submissions into comics, it's about who you drink in the bar and who you know with, who you know, you know. You read all these articles about how people got into comics, and
Yep.
you think, oh, you have to just keep sending in your scripts and your things, and most of them said, oh, we know such and such a body, and they in the bar at UCAC, and they just introduced us to somebody else. And you go, oh, that's how you do it. And so we did that, and life just then started to get in the way, and I stopped doing it for a very long time. And one of the characters that we had at the time was a guy called Captain Scotland, which was a Captain Britain ripoff. And it was 25 years later, and I thought, oh, I reckon I'll just do a short story with this guy.
Mm.
And I was into marketing and stuff, and I just sent a media release out to the newspapers that I was doing this short story, and it
Yeah.
got picked
Yeah.
up by the newspapers, local newspapers, and about this character coming back 25 years later, and even made it onto TV as well. That I was doing this, which was just a hoot. I just didn't expect it.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then at the same time, I thought, well, if it was that easy to do that, perhaps it'll be easy to do a magazine about comics, because I know there wasn't really one at the time, and
Yeah.
I was just starting to get back into it, and I was fascinated that the treasury of British comics was starting to come out at that point. So you were starting to get all these old comics coming in, but I was
Yeah.
really fascinated by everything else. So I was fascinated by manga and the fact that if I went into a bookshop, all the kids were not reading graphic novels; they were going to the manga section,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
find it really. I mean, as someone who hasn't grown up on manga, you start to go, well, this is really interesting because manga to me is a bit like when you first look at it, you go, it's like punk never happened. It's
Yeah.
like, everybody's style is exactly the same in these piles and piles and piles and piles of manga books. You just go,
Yeah.
well, there isn't a Ian Gibson or a Cam Kennedy or a Dave Gibbons or a Brian Bolland in here. It's all the
Mm,
same. It's literally like
mm.
someone's gone to art school and been told by their lecturer, "You will draw like this." and and I
Yes.
found that really fascinating. And but at the same time, the books are fabulous and the kids love them. So there must be, but they're cheap and they're black and white and they're action packed. So there's so I was fascinated by that, and I was fascinated that you're starting to get kids books that were, it wasn't the Beano and the Dandy anymore. It was books in bookshops that were selling millions, in the States and things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then you've got all these beautiful European not books, and you just go, I don't have enough money, and two, I don't have enough time to read all this stuff. But
Yeah.
can I do something that would maybe perhaps capture some of this?
Mm,
And that's
mm.
how I kind of got into comic scene. And comic scene, I would say, was probably more focused on the kind of retro scene because that's what I was familiar with, and it was just starting to come out again. But I think later issues started to, uh, get into the indie scene and see all these wonderful comics that people were producing. That when I was doing it 25 years ago, I was maybe me and a
Yeah.
half dozen other people, and then suddenly that because of Kickstarter, which I didn't quite grasp at the time, and so I didn't launch it on Kickstarter. I did it in a traditional subscribe kids, and
Mm.
and then you see all these wonderful indie comics and what people are doing, not just in the UK, but Canada, Australia,
Oh
all these
yeah.
places. And I was just getting into that, my stride on that, and then COVID hit, and that was uh,
Mm.
that was a bit of a blow.
Oh yeah. To say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No.
so yeah, so we did about 21 issues, and it first was meant to be subscription, and then I went to this first comic mart in Edinburgh that
Yeah.
someone had
Yeah.
introduced, a guy called John McShane had introduced me to be there, and there was a couple of guys from Forbidden Planet were there, and they saw the
Ooh,
magazine and they said, "Oh, we'd like to put it in our shops."
that's
And
amazing.
then the other Forbidden Planet saw it through Diamond, and they said, "Oh, we'll put it in our shops." And then Diamond took it on, and they offered it to comic shops, and they took it on, and then that was going okay. But you start to work out that you're never going to sustain this, and then
Yeah.
I thought, well, maybe I'll just write a letter to the people who distribute this magazine on newsstands and see what happens. And they
Mm.
picked it up, and that's how we ended up being on newsstands in the UK. And we
Nice.
got into supermarkets, and then they suggested sending it over to the States and Australia and Canada, and so it ended up in shops over there.
Wow.
Um, and that was it was great. I mean, it wasn't huge sales, but it was. I was always told when we started it that it would be 2 years of hard slog, and you wouldn't make any money.
Yeah.
But and then after the 2 years, something might happen. You might you would either say, right, that's it, we've done that now, and that's it, finished. And
Yeah.
there's such a history of comics in the UK that last 12 issues,
Mm.
15 issues, 19 issues, or something might happen. And I think it was Forbidden Planet said to me at the time, "Oh, we're ready to maybe put this in American comic shops as well." So, well, that sounds
Wow.
like so it was just starting to break even, and I thought, well, that'll take it over the edge. That'll mean we'll be able to, keep. printing it because we're bound to sell, so many copies in the US based on sales in the UK.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and all deals were off, and
Yeah. Yeah.
footfall disappeared, and it was just not. I mean, you just had to just go. I've got to get out of this, or you're just going to lose loads and loads of money.
Yeah. 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 Wow. So Kickstarter to the rescue then.
Yeah, well, I was, I think when you have something like that, you go, well, that's that. You just stop, and and I was having other issues at the time, personal issues, not for me personally, but other personal issues that I had to deal with, and and you just and I was so I did things just for the hell of it, really. So I started History of Comics, um, because you could control things a little bit better. So when you do Kickstarter, you're not having to print 2,000, 3,000 copies to put 5 copies in each newsagents or whatever. You're just producing what needs to be produced, and so it was easy to manage the print costs, and the we pay writers, and we pay artists, we pay designers,
Yeah.
to do fairly quality products, and so that's great. So it was it and as I said, the only thing that really affects the History of Comics is because it's 4 issues at a time. It's quite a heavy package.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with postage, it suddenly became, postage was going up and up and up, and you were suddenly going, well, this, we can send this out for, this is going to cost the person 40 quid to buy, but actually, if we post it out to them, it's costing
Mm.
double or more than that, and that's just not right. And we were just
Yeah.
getting to that point with History of Comics where we could start making it cheaper, but then COVID and cost of living and all this started and you could see the print prices suddenly went up and the postage suddenly
Yeah.
went up, and the model was flawed. So we've kind of had to put the brakes on it, and just go, well, we could probably do some History of Comics in the future, but maybe just
Mm.
do one at a time, because it's just too expensive for people. And even if we
Yeah.
did it, people wouldn't be able to afford it because everyone's tightening their belts a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was kind of going, well, actually, I want to maybe I'll try Comic Scene as a Kickstarter and see if
Mm.
people are interested in that, and perhaps change it a little bit than from the magazine it was, and try and start by being fairly eclectic and trying to encompass as much of the comic industry in it as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And so
No,
that's what we.
that's yeah, that's amazing. And I think it's totally fair to do that assessment as well, because history of comic books requires a lot of like different kind of effort. Like you need a lot of typesetting, you need a lot of you're like getting your page right, and even the page sizes are actually quite big. I don't know what you're going for with comic scene, but
Yeah.
in history of comics, page sizes are big, and that just inflates the cost as well overall. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'd wish I'd. I mean, it may be one of the things that we have to go back to, in that I think we should have done them smaller. We should have done them book size, and it may be that we will do them book size in the, redo the ones that we've done, and then start them in book size. But I think we've got to make I think we've got to just stand back a little bit and then make a decision on what we're going to do there. Because the idea was to do, 100 years of comics, and I was thinking about how old I am, and when they could be finished by. So I was going. I reckon that I could probably do this by, for the next 10 years if I do 4 at a time, and then I'll be able to retire, and
Yeah.
then maybe then we could just do reprints, and that'd be my retirement fund. um, so yeah, I was trying to do that, and then most people who are my age who are into these sorts of books would. But yeah, I think we have to review it, and I think it's really good to do books of the year so that when someone is 40 and 50, they
Mm.
buy that book
Yeah, yeah,
for their birthday.
yeah.
um, so, but yeah, but yeah, it was a nice format. It's just that they're slightly too big when you do the package. So
Mm, mm. No, that's cool. I'm definitely and with like I think you've done great with comic scene as well because not many people are actually we as we've seen in the last few days uh, they don't pay fair page rates and doing all of that on top
yeah,
of already stressed out supply chain lines. It's a big thing to do. So yeah, kudos to you for doing that.
yeah. I mean, for me, it was really. I mean, it's just a completely stupid thing to do. But I was like, well, I'll be upfront on this. I won't. We won't do it as we won't do it as a profit share. We won't do it as a uh, we'll just offer a decent page rate for the strips, and
Mm,
so people can see what they're putting into the magazine. And in some ways, we all talk about we all talk about um, we think that people should get a decent page rate. But I think what we've also got to accept is that people have got to support what you're doing, and um, and we're trying to do a few other things around this issue of comic scene. So we've got a comic creator directory in it as well, so that people can get a bit of their news. So if you do a media show or whatever, you just pay a little bit of money and you get a listing in it, and you can put a little bit of news in there.
mm.
And um, and we're sharing that on our website as well. And we do email lists out to people as well. And the reason behind that is so that we can share to people like libraries and schools the details of people who are available for, because most comic creators will never make lots of money from necessarily, um, selling their comics, but
Mm.
but if you can draw or you can write or whatever, you can get workshops, you can get commissions, you can make a good living out of it.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
it's it's just having some place where people can find that information easily, because at the moment, everyone's got a website, everybody's got Twitter and Mastodon and all the different things,
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
so vast that it actually is quite hard to find it. So to have it in one place, and that helps support the magazine. It helps support the creators who write for the magazine. It helps support the people who do the strips as well. So we've
yeah.
done that, and we've also done what's called CS Plus, which is kind of so on our website we've just got quite a lot of memory space.
Mm.
So what if you subscribe to it, it means that so if you're in Australia, for example, you can read over 100 comics in there in digital, and it's like a
That's
streaming
amazing.
service. So you're just paying a fee. I think it's 30 quid for the year,
Yeah,
and we give a percentage of that to the creators as well, so they get something back from it. And it's just trying to bring all these things together around the magazine.
that's amazing.
Um, and it's not something that will happen immediately. It's not something that will happen overnight, but having I think it may be something that people will latch onto
Mm.
as we go on. They'll go, oh, wait a minute, to be into this directory, I can do this, and then
Yeah,
and the magazine is going to slightly change in tone, because it was really based at the fans, but I think we're trying to create a nice middle ground where it's appealing to creators and fans
yeah.
in the new version. And
Nice.
it also allows for people to learn things. So, for example, we've got columnists now that we're approaching at the moment. And one of those columnists will be someone who knows more about manga than I do. and
Mm.
we'll be able to tell people about, not in a several pages way, but just a column where they introduce it, and you just start to get an understanding of it, and so that in the future you might read about something a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And we're speaking to some creators and getting them to write articles about their journey, how they got into comics,
Mm.
what their techniques are, how
Cool.
they approach work, how they got a publishing deal, all
Yeah.
these things
Yeah.
that people would like to know.
Mm.
So we're trying to create a nice little balance of that. I mean, one of the magazines that I used to love many years ago was Escape magazine.
Mm.
It
Mm.
was Paul Gravett did that, and there's some of the artists that Phil Elliott and all these people who used to draw Honda Emerson and all this kind of stuff. I used to love that magazine. Used to love it to death, and I
Yeah.
think it lasted about 19 issues, as most of these magazines do. And there was always
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about bringing it back. And I'm not saying that comic scene will ever be as good as Escape will, but if I was to say I'd like to try and emulate something, that's probably as close to what I'd like
Mm.
to see. And that I've still got a copy of Escape where Jonathan Ross, who's a TV personality over here, and Neil Gaiman were in there
Mm.
talking about the Killing Joke, I think it was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we can get the next Neil Gaiman or to write for us, that would be
That would
fantastic.
be amazing. I know.
So definitely pledge, because you never know. You might
For sure.
yeah.
For a very long time,
Hmm.
I think Comic Scene was just like that tab of Comic Scene website. The directory was open on my laptop for over a year.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, it was it was
it's
it, it was odd
yeah,
because again, it was one of those. It was the directory we launched it just as COVID hit, so all the libraries
yeah,
shut. So it was kind of not going anywhere, and I thought, well, we'll just rejuvenate it a little bit. And I think other places have
yeah,
started to do these sorts of things, but we were there way, 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 way back. And the reason that we've not been able to share it, I mean, there's some libraries that have only just opened in May last year, and so I think it's probably a good time to try and move that forward. And the idea is to get creators in front of people. And from my my day what was my day job, I was able to produce a history comic, which you can get as part of the pledge on Kickstarter,
mm,
and it was funded by Heritage Lottery Scotland. And we were able to pay people some of the people who were on that directory, a decent page rate for what they were doing.
mm,
So
mm,
sometimes, these sorts of things do pay off. I mean, I know sometimes people go, oh, if you do something for free or you put a little bit into it, it's all about, we'll give you some coverage and stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah,
people go, oh. But sometimes, there is an opening where if you're, I mean, I've not got a creative bone in my body really. I'm just completely, I'm not even a great organizer, I would say. I just enjoy doing it. But
mm,
sometimes something comes up and you can go, oh, actually, this guy or this girl was really nice to me, and I'm going to give them a page in here, and they're going to get 100, 200 quid for doing it. And
mm, mm.
that's kind of, I quite kind of like that. So
Nice.
yeah, that's
No,
kind of.
that's amazing. That's
Mhm.
amazing. Yeah, that's really, really good. One thing, like I know that for sure COVID changed was how libraries work as well. Like we have a huge library
Mhm.
in my local area here,
Mhm.
and it's obviously pre-COVID. We used to go there all the time. Even now, we
Yeah,
go there all the time
yeah, yeah,
because obviously, there nothing beats the experience of sitting in a library and reading a book there, right?
yeah,
Or
yeah,
interacting with people in a library. But they do have like a huge ebook section as well. So like
yeah,
you can download the app, and they actually like buy a lot of comics from overseas. And feature a lot of creators and artists,
yeah,
global ones, yeah,
yeah.
through the ebooks, which is really amazing as well.
Yeah, I mean, and they do something very similar here. There's a and they are. US comics by and large, I think. And I suppose it's like our digital is really kind of indie comics, and maybe we'll get people who have written about comics as well. So it's slightly different from what you would get in the library, I think. Um, Maybe hopefully people will see that and respond to that, because some of the work that the indie creators are making is absolutely amazing. It's just total. It
I
just knocks
know.
you out. I mean, some of
Yeah.
the. I mean, sometimes you get a Kickstarter back and you just go, "Well, it was a nice cover," but sometimes you just get a lovely nugget, and
Yeah.
those down. Is it Downlands? I think was one that I've just picked up, which is a was just. I mean, the pacing on it, the artwork on it, it's just
Yeah.
absolutely an amazing, and why it's not with a publisher, I have no idea. Well, probably because you can make more money doing it yourself than going with a publisher. I think it's really
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it? Because publishers, well, it's really. I mean, everyone keeps talking about conditions that are given to artists and writers, and I think
Mm.
like if you write an academic book, you don't get anything. You don't get paid anything.
Mm.
It's all about
Yeah.
your, being on the ref, and you'd have to sell lots and lots of books, academic books, before you get any money from Palgrave.
Mm.
And then you've
Mm.
got all these, but because comics are changing into sort of more graphic novel type, original graphic novel books, you're sort of starting to get the same advance that a writer would for doing it. So maybe
Mm.
just £5,000 or whatever, or 10,000,
Yeah.
and you're obviously going to get the superstars from time to time, um,
Yeah.
who will come through. But that's the same with books, isn't it? Most people, to get onto the top 10 of the books charts, maybe sell 400 books a
Oh
week.
yeah. Yeah.
Whereas, and then there'll be the Joe Nesbos and the J.K. Rowlings and stuff who'll sell millions and millions and millions, but there isn't that many who get,
Oh yeah.
get it
Totally.
back. And it
Totally.
and it's quite hard to know that you're not getting £125 or £200 a page. You are just if you're doing a 256-page graphic novel, you're getting £5,000, and that's it. And that's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
work for people. It's a lot of work for
Yeah.
people. So the idea that you could potentially go online and just take your work and give it out yourself and maybe make 20 grand, well,
Yeah.
there's an appeal to that.
Absolutely not. I actually wrote a book. I got a book published through a publisher in UK, and
Mm.
they paid me what, like $2,000 US dollars in
Yeah,
advance.
yeah.
Um, and I never saw another dime after that. So I spent
No,
like 7 months writing that book. Got
yeah,
published. They
yeah,
sold 1,100 copies of it, and I would get like what, 40 cents for
yeah,
per sale or something. It was like, wow, this
yeah.
is a joke.
You sat there going, I should have become a musician
Yeah.
and made one good album
Yeah.
and lived off it for the rest of my life. That's what I should have done.
No. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Very, very few people are Alan Moore, and very few people
Yeah,
are,
yeah. We all,
I mean,
yeah, and you start to see that it's all autobiographies of people who haven't really lived a life yet, and then you've got all these books by personalities who have obviously been ghostwritten, but their name
yeah,
sells the book. Um, and,
absolutely.
and and you just want to phone them up and go, your ghostwriter was really rubbish. But um, I don't think many uh, comic writers, get people to ghost write and draw for them anymore. So,
No,
so
no. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, that's cool. We're coming to time, but
mhm.
it was great having you on the show, and
Well, it's great speaking.
yeah, absolutely. If you have any like special rewards or something coming up, just take the stage for like next 2 minutes. Talk about it. Anything about the campaign that people should look out for.
Well, obviously, I mean, we've got another couple of days for the campaign to go. We've got a number of rewards in there that will give you over 100 comics to read, including back issues of History of Comics and Comic Scene. You'll get the new Comic Scene book. You'll be able to read the Tara Togs strip. There may be some other strips in there. Just depends on how the Kickstarter goes. We're planning to do 3 a year, which seems fairly manageable. And maybe in 2025 we might do a couple of comics with the Comic Scene brand, anthologies, pretty much like our 2021 annual, where we got some indie creators just to do to do a 7 or 8 page short story based on some of the
Yeah.
characters that had appeared in indie comics before,
Mm.
which really worked really well. It was a great campaign, and we've got better and better at when we do these sorts of things. I think a lot of collectors like to get original art and original scripts, and we might do a little bit more of that on our comics in the future. Hopefully do a history of comics. I'd really like to do a sort of 1930s, 1940s one, which captures creation of Wonder Woman and
Yeah.
Superman, Batman, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, but Comic Scene is what we're concentrating on the moment. It's coming out in November. It's going to be a kind of review of the year, preview of next year, and then the next one will be looking at the Comic Cons that will be coming out throughout the year and the guests that are going to be there. And then the following one will hopefully be a bit more indie orientated, capturing on things that perhaps people comics that people are unaware of. So that's kind of the pace of the year,
Yep.
and
Yep.
hopefully we'll
Yep.
capture all aspects of the comic scene
That's
um, over the next few issues.
that's amazing. And yeah, please do back this. We have 2 more days to go.
2 more
I was
days.
two
Two.
more days. Just yeah, and yeah, I've backed it.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
yeah.
I don't know what it is in Australian dollars. What's a fiver in Australian dollars? I don't know.
6 or 7 Australian
Oh well,
dollars.
there you
It's not
go.
too bad.
Still
Yeah,
under a
yeah,
tenner.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're really
Exactly.
keen, and actually, what's most important is we've done the CS Plus, and we're really keen to hear from indie creators in Australia, Canada, US, France, to put them into. We've got space for about 900 comics in there, and it's just a chance for people to see these things that are in other countries that we'll never experience.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And you can read them in digital. And if you really like it, if you're passionate about what you read, then perhaps
Yeah,
you will make that investment of $25 for the postage to get the physical copy, but at least you can see it. So if there's any creators out there who do want to show or do want to be in the creators directory, no matter where you are in the world, we'd love to hear from you as well.
absolutely. I can definitely put you up with a few. And
Cool.
and yeah, one thing that actually indie creators do have that a lot of mainstream comics are not able to do is they are not bound by pressure of telling the stories a certain way. So
Mm,
they truly own their own story. Like
yeah,
they're able to tell a story that they want to say in a way
yeah,
they want to do. So
yeah,
I that's what I love about about indie comics. There's so much more authentic compared to a lot of other stuff
yeah,
which is
yeah. I mean, it's like I think the popular indie comic. So we do the Comic Scene Awards every year, and I think the number one comic that from the indie scene came from Ali Fell. I don't know if you read Ali's.
no.
Oh, it's a great comic. You should if you, he's done a new one as well. They've done a new one as well, and it's just so you've got the Trick of the Light. I think was the first one, and the Kissing Gate is the new one. Absolutely brilliant. But what I liked about it is it looks like a girl's comic, but there's certain themes in it that you would never have got in a girls' comic, from
Yeah,
the
yeah,
in the 70s. And I, but it felt right. It felt it was quite liberating to read it and go. People can tell these stories in the way that
yeah,
they want
yeah,
to tell them, and then if they want to go in a direction that makes you think, well, I would never have seen that in Ginty, Tammy Bunty, whatever. Then
yeah,
it's
yeah.
absolutely brilliant, and it's quite and it's a great comic. There's just some great, and it was well deserving of. I mean, it won by a long mile.
Mm,
The sort of indie comic of the year, and I'm sure they'll do a lot in the next comic scene awards as well. But yeah, that was a great comic as well. But I'm sure
absolutely.
there's those titles in Canada, Australia, France, whatever. It would be great to see
For
those too.
sure. Yeah, yeah. 100%. Totally, totally,
Yeah,
totally. Good stuff. Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show, Tony.
thanks
Really
for having
appreciate
me.
your time today. Yeah.
No, thank you. That was grand. I really enjoyed it. And, um, thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers.